So next up, we've got Chris and Bobby Henggeler from Kachana Pastoral Company. Most of us know Chris and Bobby, been around a long time. I hold these two fellas in very high esteem. There's not much better knowledge you can get than living on country solidly for so many years. And I don't know how long, but I'm sure, Chris, you've been out there for pretty much just about ever. And Bobby was born out there. So welcome up, and really looking forward to what you've got to say. Thank you.
Hey, I'll just, thanks for that, Steve. 32 years I've been at Kachana. Dad was there a couple before that. But so yeah, we're just about 150k southwest of here, a small little pastoral lease in some very rocky and accessible country where we've been doing our best to look after the little chunk of dirt we got. And Chris will start off, and then we'll watch a movie, and then I'll give my angle as well.
Next slide.
Set him around. And then hit the top one, is it? The big one.
On this. There you go. 6 people I knew personally are no longer with us because of flames. And in each case, it wasn't the fire that ended up killing them. Some here may recall the Bali bombing of 2002. Among the many heroes that responded were those who treated burns. Burns lead to exposure. Dehydration then kills burn victims. A burn can damage or literally remove the skin, also off a landscape. When landscapes dehydrate, so does life. Try walking around out there for 2 days or so without access to fluids. When management exposes landscapes, soils, plants, and animals dry out and die. Dying living things become fuel or flames, and the heat of such flames leads to further dehydration and more death. Whether we use plows, bulldozers, chainsaws, fire, herbicides, or poor pastoral practices. After exposure, i.e. the removal of skin, dehydration is what does most of the killing in this part of the world. The killing begins at a cellular level. If you're not convinced, experiment with your own skin, or at least with a single flame and a blade of green grass. Just watch carefully and see what happens. In a sense, we all have skin in the game. Killing the life in our landscapes is like killing our mother. But in doing so, we also risk killing our grandchildren by removing opportunity for livelihoods. A few weeks ago, Rangeland NRM kindly put together a 6-minute video about how we as a family attempted to care for our burn patient, our mother, country on Kachana.
In the rugged heart of the Kimberley is a pastoral station so remote it has no road access. Kachana Station has a 30-year story of transformation from baked bare dirt to productive soil. At Kachana, Chris, Jacqueline and the Henggeler family are regenerating landscape health by turning grazing animals into soil builders. Despite many challenges, this trailblazing family have demonstrated what can be achieved through the power of managing holistically. This is their story.
We took on degraded range country south of El Questro Station that was turning into a desert. On the ground, this was a grim picture of broken ecological cycles. Lifeless soil was unable to absorb rainfall and instead rapidly washed away each wet season. Constant grazing by feral animals with no herd behaviour played a driving role. Selective overgrazing left less palatable undergrazed plants to dry off and fuel bushfires. Without effective cycling of this fuel load into the soil, dry season wildfires devastated the landscape and exposed the soil to accelerating erosion. Despite annual monsoonal growth, ecological health and productivity were in a spiral of decline. Sadly, this insidious tale of desertification is all too common in northern Australia. But we believed more was possible. There was sunshine and rain, key ingredients for life and productivity. What was missing was management. So we've just dug our way through about 6 inches of mulch of various ages, and now we're at the soil surface interface, and here we are beginning to build a sponge. So if we look at it, we can see it's actually got a sponge-like structure, and below the soil is actually more like cottage cheese. So when the soils are alive, the structure is like cottage cheese. However, when they're dead, the structure is like cheddar. And that's the thing, is we need cottage cheese, not cheddar. We need soils that will soak up the water and then gradually release it.
We set about rebuilding landscape health at Kachana by turning small groups of feral cattle and later donkeys into landscape management tools.
And once we started harnessing the animal energy, we ended up with more mouths and more hooves here every year, which is counterintuitive. Just like it's counterintuitive that the waters here is because of the grass. Just adding more grass, we end up with more water. And the reason why we've got more grass is because of the way we influence the behaviour of the large herbivores, or all herbivores ultimately.
We use portable electric fences to move grazing herds in high density across the landscape. Areas are mowed and trampled with the equivalent of 300 to 1200 head per hectare for only a very short duration. By converting vegetation into mulch and fertiliser, we feed soil life instead of wildfire. Long periods without grazing then follow each animal treatment. This gives plants and soil life time to recycle nutrients, regrow and replenish energy reserves. Instead of constant grazing, this holistic approach creates a positive cycle of grass farming and soil building.
Fertilised and pruned vegetation that can still capitalise off last year's rainfall. So what we're looking for in a landscape is signs of green. Green is telling us that we're harvesting some of the gratis energy we get on a daily basis, and that we've managed to hang on to a little bit of water that dropped out of the sky.
Where we can't graze, we also use wet season burning. We do this to encourage fresh growth and add fire breaks to mitigate the impact of bushfires. The resulting landscape mosaic promotes biodiversity, the engine of our ecosystem. Today, thanks to thriving grass and soil, water cycles are being healed. The creek supplying the homestead was an eroding gully and now flows year-round. Our ongoing journey at Kachana has proven these principles work to regenerate healthy soil, water cycles and biodiversity. Nature is a constant creator, and when management aligns with her, we have a powerful ally.
It is now more important than ever to protect and restore biodiverse and resilient landscapes. The time to act is now. We cannot afford to wait. To make this happen, we need increased community action and support. Capable and willing people need to be inspired, trained and supported to apply these proven principles at scale. These land doctors will actively regenerate and strengthen Australia's ecological foundations from the soil up. Kachana's story demonstrates how the power of managing holistically can secure a bright future of healthy soil for prosperity across the rangelands and beyond.
I would also like to take this opportunity to thank people in the community here who've supported us over the years. We've had lots of volunteers come out there, help us deal with fires and help with other things. A special shout out to DFES, or FEES as they used to be called, who in recent years have helped communication straddle station boundaries, cultural boundaries, and departmental boundaries. And I think without this communication, we wouldn't be standing here today. And I think communication and building trust and working together, we've heard that a number of times. I think that is certainly something that this community is building, and we look forward to more of this. We're happy to field some questions here. We've still got a few minutes.
Cool. I'll just bring a little bit sort of from my observations growing up here, and obviously you saw some of the way I grew up and where I grew up, and then my later years moved to town and sort of spent a lot of time across old Kimberley. And in the broader landscapes, from what I've observed, and I'm not a scientist, I'm just someone who's been here for a considerable amount of time, is it boils down to two options. When you get about this much rain a year, on average, something will grow. Now, exactly what grows, that's discussing hairstyles. That will depend on the soil health. Simple, but something will grow. Now, when something grows, we've got two choices in the bigger landscape. Is either we manage it with fire or we manage it with herbivores. Both need management, and that's where it gets complex. And that's where you find most of the disagreement and the arguments is at that level. It's how do you manage it, who manages it, who should manage it, who whatever. Like, I've been to that many fires with that many different agencies involved, and I have not been to one yet where someone wishes that they'd done a less good job. Like it comes back to the last bit of that video is getting more people so that we can do a better job, or if you can't go out and do it, educate younger people that are coming through that they might be inspired to come and do it. And if you can't do that as well, if you're bound to an office, well, spread the message, educate, put it out there, see if you can get more resources. And if we have more resources, then we can do a better job. But ultimately, that's the sort of catch. It's not, and that's really about. I'll pull it up at about that, and we'll field some questions. Throw them at us, and we'll be around afterwards too if there's any more. Sweet. Must have sorted, eh? All good. Yeah, go.
Where to from here? Where to from here? Like, you've obviously repaired the land. It looks considerably better going through those photos, images there. So is it an education development program, or do you feel that Kachana could be improved further?
Oh no, we've got a long way to go. Like, those photos, we're only talking about 5-10% of the area. Now, the issue we've got is we've got 750 odd square k's of country out there with a handful of us out there. It's where to from here. At the end of the day, once you can get a level of health back into your soils and into your system, then it is also more resilient. So you can look at all that grass we got there. Well, we spend a heap of effort and money every year trying to just protect that, because we've created in certain areas our own fire nightmare. Because if we get a fire in there, then there's a lot more to combust than what we had in the first slide. Yeah, so it's an ongoing thing. But if the focus goes probably away from managing fire or herbivore to more the long-term outcome of rehydrating soil, re-establishing creek beds, getting health back, well, then if you get the odd fire or you get the odd flood, well, your country will bounce back. It can handle that, and as Kath Ryan said in her first speech, burning unhealthy pasture ain't going to improve it. It's not, and then slide 2, he touched on it, where we're replacing in Arnhem Land, particularly where they're seeing that they're replacing woodlands with more and more cane grass. And once you've done that change, then you start creating your own fire nightmare too. So does that answer your question, or have I gone? I'll see if Chris can probably add to that. Sorry, Bob.
Bob mentioned earlier about people discussing hairstyles and getting into arguments about discussing hairstyles. What we're saying is, let's get the hair growth going first, and then we can discuss hairstyles. And once the hair is growing on more and more landscapes, we can have all sorts of different hairstyles, and then work out what's fashionable and what's not and what works. But it is definitely scalable, and what we've discovered, it has to come from the bottom up, just like community action has to come from the bottom up. You then have the advantage of the top-down regulation and coordination opportunities that we have, but the answer, the solution is going to have to be bottom-up and support.
And I suppose it's putting a value on that thing. So like a couple of years ago, Turkey Creek going underwater, we spent $200 million, taxpayers, we spent that. We didn't address the problem. That creek's going to flood again. So you know, when do you put a value on it, and how do you, and where do you draw the line and say, right, well, maybe we need to invest a little bit. You know, at the end of the day, no one gets a medal for teaching a kid to swim. They get a medal for rescuing it when it's drowning. Yeah, so it's changing that mindset, going, hang on a minute, what can we do? And really, at the end of it, it's support. You know, the ranger group I was on fire a couple of times this year with Hamish at the back. How are you, mate? Like, we need more support. You need more people that are actually out there doing it. And sometimes that's hard, cold cash. Like, there's you know, for people to go and do that. So, but the cost is real. You know, those 200 million that was spent, that's a real cost, and it's going to come again. That's the issue. You know, that's sort of yeah.
Have we got time for another question?
Yes, there's time for another question.
Does anybody want to ask another question?
It's with the animals you've got out there. So are they just naturally breeding now, and they started all from ferals, and so, or did you have to augment the population with bringing in the occasional heifer or whatever?
That is a question we could write a book about. I'll try and keep it short. We started off with feral animals. So feral herbivores, that is domesticated herbivores that were brought to this country and went feral. What we said is, well, we can change the behavior of these herbivores so that they behave like their wild ancestors would have way back when, before they were domesticated. So we know Australia used to have large herbivores as well, and that's the key. We're still learning. There's an awful lot of learning to do, but the idea is get these animals to work, and this is where earlier a presenter said we've got two blunt tools. I actually believe that fire, as well as management of herbivores, can be very precise tools, and there's some interesting stuff happening worldwide on that front.
But it's back to that same caveat. It needs management. So ongoing management needs resources, needs people, needs, you know, that caveat still exists over those tools, you know.
And it also needs a community understanding of what we want to see out there for our grandchildren in 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 years' time, and manage towards that as a community. So custodianship actually should take precedence over enterprise efficiency. My opinion is no. And my opinion is what unites us is we all need hydrated landscapes, whether we're vegans or even arsonists. We still need to eat, and we still need to have hydrated landscapes. So I think we've got something in common there. If we could just start looking at what's happening out there and start doing things, run a few different experiments. It's great having AWC sort of as our neighbour, because they want healthy, biodiverse landscapes, and they're favouring fire. We're favouring the herbivores, and we're using fire. So yeah, let's have a few experiments out there and try our best and manage for what we want rather than respond to what we don't want.
Do you think a lot of these national parks would be made better with the introduction of herbivores?
All land could be managed better, but it needs more people doing it. And you know, in our area, we're favouring herbivores. Parks at this stage are favouring fire. Both great. They're both tools, but it requires management. And I'm not sure if Brad's here, but you know, all the parks boys, like, I guarantee that they could do with more resources and do a better job themselves. Like I said, I haven't been to a single fire, even in parks, where, you know, at different levels, either on the ground or as a pilot, bringing people in. I haven't been to one yet where we've all walked away and gone, oh shit, we did too good a job there, you know, we couldn't have done any better. No, like, but yes, if you have herbivores there, you're going to need to manage them. You're going to need to manage the population, the distribution, their behaviour. It needs people on the ground to do that. Yeah, so So, but yeah, out there really, for large scale. You're not going to run around with a slasher out there or a whippersnip. It's really for cycling, and we're going to get that rain, so something will grow. So yeah, that answer you.
So one of our key challenges was right at the beginning is turning raindrops from bombshells into mist irrigators, so that when a raindrop comes down, it actually stays as close to where it landed for as long as possible. Now, I'm not aware that we can do that with only fire. I'm not saying we don't use fire as a tool, but we do need to be building mulch and building our organic horizons and pumping carbon back into the soils. So this is where we've got to learn, get local knowledge, and each paddock's going to be different. So we need to bring in the new knowledge, but also respect the local experience, the local knowledge, and what people want for their business, for their grandchildren, for their heirs, and what we need as a community for water security if the community is going to grow.
To burn, for example, because I understand that is one of the tools. So how do you make the decision to burn if there's not enough management there? So you're saying you come away and you don't come away saying, yeah, we've done a great job or we could have done better. So who makes the decision, or why do you make the decision to go in there and burn if there aren't the correct resources there?
So standard ecological answer, which Dad always brings, is it depends. So Sarah, that will depend so much on season, what we're dealing with, what fires are there. I'm assuming, and correct me, that your question is more orientated to preventative or pre-season burning, not so much response. So in that regard, like we said, a lot of the Kimberley, in my opinion, gets burnt by calendar. It's when it sort of suits everyone to be there. Unfortunately, that is the case because there's just not enough resources out there in a lot of the areas to do a better job. So we're lucky enough in our little patch that I can be there and we got 20 mil of rain that night and I'll go perfect. I'll go light the spinifex in January, February, instead of having to do it in April when I can burn my valleys. Now that's on a small scale, not just on a small scale, but on scale, because I'm there, I can do that. Yeah. So to answer or to home in on your question of why we still use fire in certain areas is because physically we just can't get there with the herbivores and the areas. It's not realistic. Also, I suppose the other thing is too, we'll have a set of priorities where we can say, right, this is an area where we don't want fire to go into because we're doing all this work with the herbivores. So to keep that out, we'll have to do that. But then I can manage that. I can pick a window, and I still do an awful lot out of that. We still do an awful lot out of the aeroplane and helicopter in sindri dropping and that sort of stuff to areas that it's just not quite accessible. So it's unfortunately, there will remain a combination of both because it will grow.
I do recommend the reading of Victor Stephenson's book, Fire Country. The point where I definitely agree with him is we need people back out on the landscape making decisions based on what the country's telling them, because the country has information out there and that information changes on a daily basis in some cases. Sure, thank you.
Thank you.
Told you'd be an awesome talk. I think the thing that struck home to me there was being connected with the land and being actually there amongst it and really knowing what's going on. And I think slowly that's happening. I mean, the Indigenous ranger programs are getting people back out on country and relearning some of those cultural practices. So I think we're heading on the right pathway. But forums like this, where we share information and we learn how to work more constructively together to build a good plan, are really important. So thanks again, Chris, Bobby.